Leroy Hoard didn't hold back when he dissected the Cleveland Browns' decision-making on Locked on Browns, and his words hit like a hammer. His take on Shedeur Sanders' benching wasn't just a critique. It was an exposure of franchise unraveling under its own confusion. Hoard described how the organization's so-called player development is anything but, pointing out that Sanders' limited practice reps as QB3 have more to do with politics and job security than merit or readiness.
If you're into the real story and all the messy twists they don't show on highlight reels, go ahead and subscribe. And if you're sticking around to see how this Browns QB chaos plays out, you should definitely be subscribed.
By leaning on veterans like Dillon Gabriel despite their inconsistencies, the Browns have built a system where growth is sacrificed for survival. In Hoard's eyes, the team's front office is less concerned with nurturing potential than protecting itself from blame, a philosophy that breeds mediocrity instead of progress. The heart of Hoard's message was clear. Cleveland's failure runs deeper than any quarterback controversy. Their trade for Deshaun Watson, their short-term focus, and their reluctance to trust youth have created an environment where no young talent can truly thrive. Sanders' struggle is just a symptom. The real illness lies in an organization that's forgotten how to build from within. Leroy Hoard didn't hold back, and the fallout was immediate. On a recent episode of Locked on Browns, the former NFL running back and now brutally honest analyst torched the Cleveland Browns' handling of quarterback Shedeur Sanders. And when we say torched, we mean full-on scorched earth mode. The internet lit up within minutes. Fans, insiders, even former players were split. Was Hoard just telling the truth, or did he just throw the Browns and their front office under the bus with receipts? It started with what seemed like a straightforward critique. Sanders, a high-profile name with undeniable potential, was buried on the depth chart as QB3. According to Hoard, that wasn't just bad coaching. It was symptomatic of something way worse, a deeply broken system. He claimed Sanders' development wasn't being stalled because of talent or readiness issues, but because the Browns' organizational structure was actively holding him back. Let that sink in. Hoard argued that the Browns aren't just mismanaging their quarterbacks, they're sabotaging them. From the start, Hoard made it clear Sanders' mechanical flaws, his footwork, timing, and consistency were not insurmountable. They're the kinds of issues that get cleaned up through reps, through experience, through real game action. But the Browns aren't giving him that. Sanders is stuck running scout team drills and watching from the sidelines while quarterbacks like Dillon Gabriel take the field and turn in inconsistent performances week after week. Why? Hoard says it's not about player development. It's about job security. According to him, the coaching staff, including Kevin Stefanski, is playing it safe, sticking with veterans, protecting their jobs, and avoiding risky decisions that could shake the fragile house of cards they're standing on. The Browns are 2-6. The season is already sliding, and yet they're too scared to hand the reins to a young QB who might actually grow with some playing time. It's not just a bad call. It's a complete strategic failure. And Hoard didn't stop there. He took it all the way back to what many see as the root of the Browns' dysfunction, the Deshaun Watson trade. Hoard laid it out. Trading multiple first-round picks for Watson didn't just cost the Browns draft capital. It cost them flexibility, the ability to reset, to rebuild, to develop talent like Sanders. The team is stuck in a corner it built for itself. A corner filled with overpaid veterans, missed opportunities, and no clear way out. And for what? Watson's presence hasn't turned the team into contenders. Instead, it's clogged the depth chart, distorted the quarterback pipeline, and created a pressure cooker environment where the coaching staff is too terrified to give young players a shot. Sanders is paying the price. So are the fans. Hoard even compared the situation to how other successful quarterbacks were developed. Think Mahomes. Think Lamar. These guys weren't handed the keys on day one, but they were brought along in systems that valued development. They were groomed through real reps. They had coaching staffs with vision, patience, and long-term planning. Cleveland, according to Hoard, has none of that. The team is trying to win now, but without the tools or the structure to actually do it. And by clinging to that illusion, they're wasting potential, wasting time, wasting Sanders. It's a lose-lose situation. Hoard also spotlighted the Browns' reliance on players like Dillon Gabriel as another symptom of this dysfunction. Gabriel might be a safer bet on paper, but in practice, he's inconsistent. And if the so-called safe options aren't producing, what's the justification for keeping Sanders on ice? If the veterans aren't winning games, what exactly are you protecting? It gets worse. Hoard suggested that this reluctance isn't even about protecting Sanders. It's about protecting the coaching staff from criticism. The Browns don't want to look like they're panicking. They want to look like they have a plan. But to anyone watching closely, the plan is just damage control. And in the NFL, damage control doesn't build franchises. It just delays. The franchise is stuck in a vicious cycle. They're too committed to failed decisions to pivot, too risk-averse to try something new, and too concerned with optics to prioritize real development. The Watson trade wasn't just a gamble. It was an anchor. It's locked them into a short-term mindset with no margin for error. There's no reset button, no fresh slate. Every draft pick traded, every dollar committed, limits their options going forward. And here's the part that stings. Hoard wasn't just talking about Sanders. He was using Sanders as the example, the symptom, the warning sign. Because the bigger issue is culture. Hoard made it clear the Browns' internal culture is broken. Development isn't a priority. Long-term success isn't the goal. It's all about optics, short-term gains, and protecting the status quo. And Sanders? He's just the latest young player caught in the crossfire. This isn't new for Cleveland. Fans have seen it before. The lack of vision, the mismanagement of talent, the constant shuffle of quarterbacks without a real plan to develop them. But Hoard's comments hit different. Maybe because he wasn't guessing. He was calling it as someone who's seen the inner workings of NFL franchises, who understands how culture either builds champions or buries them. The Browns' current model isn't building anything. It's barely keeping the roof from caving in. And Hoard pointed to a painful truth. The team doesn't have to choose between rebuilding and trying to win. It's not either slash or. Other teams have managed to do both. But the Browns are so locked into this win-now narrative that they're afraid to take the steps needed to actually win later. In that context, Sanders' benching becomes more than a lineup decision. It becomes a symbol of everything that's gone wrong, of how the Browns keep betting on the wrong things and hoping it'll somehow work out differently. It won't, not without a shift. Hoard's analysis pulled back the curtain. He showed how this isn't about one player or one season. It's about how the entire structure is built. Or, in this case, not built. And here's where things get uncomfortable. Hoard still believes Sanders has real potential. Leadership. Poise. That it factor. Not just because of the hype or his last name, but because he's shown flashes that, with proper support, could turn into something real. But that window is closing. Talent doesn't thrive in dysfunction. It withers. And if the Browns don't change course, they won't just miss out on Sanders. They'll miss out on any shot at long-term success. This isn't about whether Sanders is ready right now. It's about whether the Browns are even capable of getting him ready, of building the kind of environment where young talent can grow. Hoard's answer? Not in their current state. So yeah, the comments were brutal. And the regret? Instant. The moment Hoard dropped his take, debates exploded across social media. Some fans praised him for saying what needed to be said. Others thought he went too far. But no one ignored it, because the truth hits hard, especially when it's this accurate. Whether you love or hate his delivery, one thing's clear. Hoard forced a conversation that the Browns front office has been avoiding. And for fans tired of false hope and underdelivered promises, that might be exactly what needed to happen. If you're tired of watching teams squander talent with bad decisions and worse leadership, let's talk about it in the comments. Don't forget to share this with your fellow Brown survivors, and hit subscribe so you don't miss the next meltdown. Because in the NFL, the drama never takes a bye week. Let's keep it going, because the story's far from over. The ripple effects from Leroy Hoard's takedown weren't just about fan discourse or Twitter threads. His critique landed like a brick in the middle of a lake, and the splash was felt inside the Browns building. Because here's the thing, it wasn't just a hot take. It was an indictment. Hoard basically walked up to the team's leadership, handed them a mirror, and said, "Look at what you become." And when a former player, especially one with Cleveland ties, goes public like this, it hits different. He's not some outsider looking in. He knows what dysfunction smells like. He's lived it. So when he says this franchise is falling apart from the inside out, people listen. Let's zoom back in on Shedeur Sanders, because this isn't just about what he could become. It's about what's stopping him from getting there. He's QB3. That's not just a depth chart number. That's code for you're invisible unless something catastrophic happens. The third-string quarterback isn't being groomed, coached up, or tested in meaningful ways. He's just there, running scout team plays, mimicking opposing offenses. He's not learning his system. He's pretending to be someone else. Hoard called that out, loudly. Sanders isn't getting the foundational experiences that shape a future starter. And if the coaching staff actually believes he has potential, why aren't they doing anything with it? That's the heart of Hoard's frustration. It's not that Sanders is being protected. It's that he's being wasted. And sure, you could argue the Browns are just being cautious, that they're keeping Sanders in the shadows to develop quietly. But Hoard didn't buy that narrative for a second. And honestly, neither should you, because if that were true, there'd be signs of that development happening. More meaningful reps in practice, situational play packages, gradual integration into the offense. Something. Instead, it feels like the team slapped a redshirt label on him and walked away. That's not caution. That's negligence. And it gets even more damning when you remember who is getting the reps. Dillon Gabriel, the so-called safe option. The guy with enough experience to be labeled serviceable, but not enough impact to turn around a flailing season. So let's ask the obvious question. What's the point? If Gabriel isn't winning games, and clearly he's not, what are the Browns really preserving by keeping Sanders on the bench? A 2-6 record? A system that's not working? Coaching jobs that are teetering anyway? Hoard argued that it's all a facade, that the team isn't even trying to build towards something better. They're just trying to survive the headlines, get through the next week, keep the media heat off their backs a little longer. But here's the problem with playing scared. Scared teams don't win. And scared franchises don't develop quarterbacks. The Browns aren't just fumbling on the field. They're fumbling their future. And in Hoard's view, it all traces back to that fateful, franchise-defining decision, the Deshaun Watson trade. Let's not sugarcoat it. That trade was massive. 3 first-round picks. A record-setting guaranteed contract. A gamble so big, it's essentially handcuffed the team for years. And now, as that decision ages like spoiled milk, the consequences are finally crystallizing. They don't have the draft capital to pivot. They don't have the cap space to course correct. And they definitely don't have the internal structure to make up for those losses through player development. So what's left? A team stuck between a rock and a hard place, and a quarterback with untapped potential sitting on the sidelines. It's not just inefficient. It's infuriating. Hoard's argument wasn't just that the Browns are making poor choices. It's that they don't even see what they're doing wrong. They think sticking with veterans is stable. They think keeping Sanders off the field is smart. But what they're really doing is postponing the inevitable. Eventually, the Browns are going to have to find out what they have in Shedeur Sanders. And the longer they wait, the less prepared he'll be. Because game speed decisions, live bullets, real-time pressure, that's how quarterbacks grow. Not in the film room, not holding a clipboard, not watching other people make the same mistakes week after week. There's a larger theme here, and Hoard hit it, squarely on the head. Organizational culture matters. And right now, the Browns' culture is built on fear, not vision. You can feel it in their decisions. They're clinging to familiarity instead of embracing possibility. They're trying to mitigate risk instead of cultivating reward. And worst of all, they're trying to shortcut a rebuild that clearly needs to happen. Every week Sanders spends on the bench is another reminder that the Browns don't trust their own scouting, their own coaching, their own process. And if they don't trust it, why should anyone else? Even Hoard, in his brutal honesty, made a point to say that Sanders does have potential. There's a reason people were excited about him. There's a reason his name carries weight. But none of that matters if he's trapped in a system that refuses to believe in anything beyond immediate damage control. That's what makes this situation so frustrating for fans. It's not just about wins and losses. It's about direction. purpose, identity. And right now, the Browns have none of those things. You can't build a dynasty on Band-Aids. You can't develop quarterbacks with bubble wrap. And you definitely can't fix systemic dysfunction by pretending everything is fine. Leroy Hoard's critique wasn't just a hot take. It was a call to action, a warning, a gut check for a franchise that keeps running in circles. Because at some point, someone has to step up and say, this isn't working, not just in the press room, not just behind closed doors, but on the field, in the lineup, through the decisions that shape the future. That hasn't happened yet. And until it does, the Browns will keep spiraling, wasting talent, burning clock, and chasing ghosts. Maybe Sanders isn't ready today. Maybe he still has mechanical work to do. But those issues don't get fixed in the shadows. They get fixed under pressure, on the field, in real time. And if the Browns can't create that environment, can't even try, then what are they really doing? At the end of the day, this isn't just about one quarterback. It's about the pattern, the choices, the blind spots, the inability to evolve. And that's what Hoard exposed. Not just a benching, not just a bad call, but a franchise that refuses to learn. If you're a Browns fan, it's exhausting. If you're a football fan, it's maddening. And if you're Shedeur Sanders, it has to be infuriating. Because no matter how much raw talent you have, no matter how poised you are or how bright your future looks on paper, it means nothing if your team refuses to back you. And right now, the Cleveland Browns are making it loud and clear. They're not ready to bet on the future. They're too busy trying to justify the past. Here's the part that really gets under your skin, because it's not just that Shedeur Sanders is riding the bench. It's that everyone knows this is a pattern. We've seen this movie before. A promising young quarterback shows flashes, creates buzz, builds hype, and then he gets swallowed whole by a team too dysfunctional to manage his development. And what's worse, the Browns should know better by now. This isn't their first quarterback controversy. Not even close. Quarterback turnover is practically a Cleveland tradition at this point. They've gone through more signal callers than some teams have playoff appearances in the last 2 decades. So when someone like Sanders comes in, a guy with pedigree, poise, and potential, you'd think they'd be dying to do it right this time. But nope. Same playbook. Different name. Leroy Hoard didn't just tap into a problem. He cracked it wide open. And what he exposed wasn't just a questionable coaching decision. It was a total absence of a plan. Because if you're keeping Sanders on the sidelines for development, where's the development happening? If he's not getting reps, not getting situational work, not getting anything beyond clipboard duty, then what exactly are we doing here? You want to talk about long-term vision? Let's get real. There isn't one. And that's what separates the Browns from the elite franchises in this league. Look at how teams like the Chiefs handled Patrick Mahomes. They had a plan. They built a support system. They gave him time, yes, but they also gave him resources. Development wasn't passive. It was intentional. In Cleveland, development is accidental, if it happens at all. And the result is what we're seeing with Sanders, a talented prospect caught in organizational limbo. Not bad enough to discard, not trusted enough to use. Just stuck, on the shelf, while the team continues to burn daylight in draft picks, hoping a 2-6 record doesn't spiral into a full-blown collapse. But let's talk about that collapse, because Hoard didn't shy away from the real reason this is happening. It all goes back to that trade. The Watson deal isn't just an overcommitment. It's a straitjacket. 3 first-rounders, a fully guaranteed contract, and now a roster built around a quarterback who hasn't delivered the results they were banking on. That kind of move, it doesn't leave room for flexibility. It doesn't leave room for growth. It leaves you locked into a reality where every other decision is made out of fear. And fear is a terrible foundation for team building. Fear is why Sanders is QB3 instead of being groomed. Fear is why the Browns keep going back to safe options that aren't actually producing. Fear is why the coaching staff is more concerned with optics than outcomes. And fear is why the franchise keeps spinning its wheels instead of actually moving forward. Hoard made one thing painfully clear. This isn't about readiness. It's about risk. The Browns don't want to risk looking desperate. Don't want to risk backlash if Sanders struggles early. But ironically, In trying to avoid short-term pain, they're inflicting long-term damage. Because the longer you let talent sit idle, the harder it is to activate it when you need it. And sure, the Browns might say they're waiting for the right moment. But in NFL, that moment rarely arrives gift-wrapped. Sometimes you have to create it. Sometimes you have to take a chance, knowing that the payoff might take time. But that's the thing. Cleveland doesn't do patience. They do panic. They do patches. They do maybe next year. Hoard's comments stripped the varnish off the entire operation. He didn't just criticize a lineup decision. He painted a picture of a franchise that has no faith in its own future. And whether you agree with every word or not, it's hard to deny the core of what he's saying. Shedeur's Sanders situation isn't about ability. It's about dysfunction. And dysfunction doesn't fix itself. It has to be called out. So yeah, the reaction to Hoard's critique was explosive. It ruffled feathers. It made people uncomfortable. But maybe that's what this franchise needs. Maybe it's time for uncomfortable. Because if the Browns can't recognize the trap they've walked into, can't see how they're repeating the same mistakes with a new name and a different jersey number, then nothing changes. Not the record, not the reputation, not the results. And that's the tragedy here. Not that Shedeur Sanders is sitting, but that no one seems to be fighting to get him ready. No urgency, no accountability, just a franchise stuck in place, hoping that standing still counts as progress. It doesn't. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Should the Browns start developing Sanders now, or are they too far gone to get it right? Like the video if you're tired of rinse and repeat quarterback mismanagement. And don't forget to subscribe for more breakdowns, blow-ups, and all the chaos the football world can throw at us. Because this isn't just drama, it's the NFL. And the NFL never disappoints.